Hello everyone, my name is Allison Michaels. I am a Senior Customer Program Manager for the Viva Engage product group, and I'm so excited to be at the Microsoft 365 conference today. I am interviewing two of my friends and colleagues and just all around good people, and I cannot wait for you to meet them as well. Here we have John and Amy, and I'll have them introduce themselves for you. Go ahead, John.
I'm John Cirone. I manage Microsoft's GEEC function, which stands for the Global Executive and Employee Communications Community.
And I'm Amy Morris. I'm a Director of Communications for the GEEC team.
I love the things that you guys are up to, and I can't wait for you to share a little bit with this audience. One of the questions that I get from a lot of my customers is, what in the world is GEEC? So I love that you said GEEC, but can you explain a little bit more about what GEEC is? And I actually really want to know, who thought of GEEC? Like, who thought of the acronym?
So GEEC is a community, not an organization.
Okay.
So at Microsoft, we kind of have, oversimplifying here, but kind of two views of comms. You have media relations, which is a centralized organization, one org, one leader, one budget.
Okay.
And then exec comms, employee comms is intentionally decentralized. So all the folks that do that kind of work are sitting with those leaders in those orgs, in those countries. So think of GEEC as like a community center of excellence to bring all those folks together to share their learnings, to scale training, to align guidance, kind of behind a one Microsoft sort of message mentality.
And how many people are in GEEC?
Over 1,000 people. So it's
1,000
huge.
people? Wait,
Yeah.
So all 1,000 people report to you?
They do not.
Okay,
They do not.
so
No.
tell us about
No.
what that looks like. So it's like a community, but...
That's right. Like
Okay.
our team is 9 people.
Nine
so it's a
people, okay.
relatively small team for the size of Microsoft.
Right,
But
yeah.
GEEC's very decentralized and inclusive, right? So there are, for every Microsoft senior leader, there is sometimes a comms director. There
Okay.
are also people supporting that person's comms, often a chief of staff, a biz manager, an HR person who's taking part in that work. So the idea behind GEEC is bring them all together into one community because they're all playing a role in supporting leader-based comms to ensure that all of those folks are being aligned behind a central message and sort of central resources.
Okay, great. So what types of things do you do for this GEEC community to help bring them along to make sure that the messaging is correct or on brand, or especially maybe when there's some hot topics? Amy, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so we're managing from the center, right? The strategy for all employees. And so we're scaling the resources for different programs that we're trying to land across the company. We leverage a Viva Engage community to scale a lot of the resources. We also, have regular touch points, weekly emails, quarterly calls where we're looking ahead. For stickier topics, we do have a employee hot topics document that those comms leads can then reference when they're prepping their leaders for things like AMAs and different types of employee town hall events.
One of the things that I love that you guys host is like GEEC, is it Tech and Tools or something like that?
Yep.
So what does that look like? Is that like on a weekly basis? And then do you guys have like office hours, like where people are kind of like gut checking some of the things that they're doing before they go out?
Yeah, so a big part of managing the GEEC community is upskilling the function and making sure folks have access to the latest tools to do their job, including right now a ton of AI tools. So we run regular tech and tools sessions across lots of different AI and CoPilot topics, as well as the Viva Engage suite, Teams, live events, lots of different programs. We're very lucky to have a good relationship with the product team. So we do office hours so folks can come and bring questions and sort of have more of that hands-on white glove support.
Great. So with that GEEC community, has that always been a thing, or when did that start, or kind of like what were we doing before at Microsoft?
Right. I mean, in some ways, GEEC seems like an obvious solution.
Right.
Like, wouldn't you at any large company need some way to bring people together around a common goal and purpose? I think I use like a house analogy. You buy a house 30 years ago, you do the kitchen one year, the bathroom the next year,
Yeah.
and then the living room. And over time, the house gets kind of recreated. And then all of a sudden you're at your house today, and the house is a combination of pieces and bits from the last 30 years. Comms is similar. Like, comms has evolved as the company's gotten bigger and bigger over the years. And at a certain point kind of in our growth story, we realized there were a lot of people doing this kind of work that were not connected back to the corp comms kind of center. So when you wanted to drive change across the organization and align leaders behind a singular message, it was kind of hard to do because there was no way to really find those people easily. And in a world where there's crises and sort of speed is critical, we need a way to get to those folks quickly. And so we created GEEC really because of that. And so it's proven to be a really effective way to kind of scale the function and the impact from a very small team of 9 people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And you asked about why it's called GEEC. We have to get back to that critical question.
Yes, tell me.
I don't remember the full story, but I remember talking about the acronym. That's a big thing. Pick your team name, your acronym, like the buzzword in Microsoft. We were like, well, there's GEEC. And it was like, should it be GEC or GEEC? And it was actually a real conversation. There was a real debate, but GEEC was the obvious winner.
Yes.
It's kind of a great name, and it's really fun to get behind.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so earlier this week, you both spoke at the Microsoft 365 conference, and one of the sessions was about kind of the 8 lessons that you've learned over the last few years from communication professionals. I don't know if there's one maybe lesson or aha moment that you want to share that would be, that you could share with the group here.
We often get asked by our customers, how do we think about click-through rates and open rates of emails?
Yes, the measurement.
What are we measuring? Mm-hmm. And I think for John, there's like a real aha moment in measuring what matters in your history with the GEEC team and the GEEC function, and leveling up how you think about measuring the goals that comms is helping you drive across your business. So solving real business problems and aligning your comms metrics to how you're moving the needle on those. And it starts with listening, right? So it starts with the listening systems and where are you getting your data and what are other areas of the business measuring. And so I think to your credit, we've done a lot of work to really move the needle to move our measurement in that direction.
Can you give us any examples of like, what are the types of things that you're listening to, or what types of conversations are interesting or things like that?
Yeah, so we do a twice-a-year employee signals where we're surveying our employees on a variety of topics. We also manage an annual comm survey once a year, so that gives us direct insights into how our employees are perceiving communications from their leaders, communications from Microsoft, and we also measure, a variety of things like how people understand business strategies and priorities, and especially AI, security, some of these big important initiatives for the company that comm supports, right? So we're able to then tap into those insights and align our comms plans and comms goals to do employees understand our AI strategy?
Right.
Do our employees feel like they have the resources to upskill, to learn? Are they understanding what we're doing for security and the Secure Future initiative? Okay. How does comm satisfaction influence employee thriving, which is sort of the top level metric?
When you think about the metrics, what was like the big aha moment? Like, I know because I've seen your presentation, but I think one of the things that I feel like is you guys really zeroed in on what the leaders who scored the highest basically did the best. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of was in that mix of those leaders who scored the highest, or, kind of building that trust and what that looked like?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we really went down this journey investing in facilitating two-way dialogue between our leaders and our employees, both at scale across the company as well as at the leader level, at the organization level.
That feels really scary, probably, for some of our customers listening. So I can't wait for you to keep going. So, okay.
Yeah, so a big part of that, right, is listening, is leaning in, listening, demonstrating that you're listening by responding at scale. And so we were able to really measure that, leaders that had high comm satisfaction scores were doing this really well. And some of the things that they were doing well were communicating authentically, addressing topics employees care about in a timely manner, creating an open and transparent communications environment. And over time, we've also seen the impact of trust on influencing that comm satisfaction score. So we now know that if we want employees to believe that their leader is good at communicating, if we want them to believe that Microsoft does a great job communicating with them, trust has sort of an outsized influence on those scores. And the leaders that are building trust most effectively are doing the two-way dialogue really, really well. And I think we've learned over time that creating that open and transparent environment comes with a lot of reward, but also comes with some risk. And so I referred to the employee hot topics document, right? That was one way that we were able to kind of scale and mitigate some of that risk. So on more sensitive topics, we're able to provide some really consistent messaging. So employees are getting the same message regardless of what leader is responding at scale. And we've also, worked very closely with the Viva Engage team as we use that platform to do a lot of this two-way dialogue at scale, right? Posting from leaders and employees able to respond and engage and comment and have conversations on this platform in a really meaningful way.
Yeah.
We get better insights into what those, what is the sentiment on some of those topics? What are employees saying? Where are they saying it across the platform? Mm-hmm. And how can we make sure it's happening in a really safe way for those folks that want to have those conversations and others that want to opt out?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I know you guys have been on a journey and it hasn't happened overnight. So yeah, thank you for keeping on with the journey. We love kind of that two-way dialogue with so many of those leaders. John, what about you? What was one of the aha moments that you want to call out or kind of bring to light from yesterday's presentation?
I'll add a fine point to what Amy just said versus another one.
Okay.
I think a lot of where that work stems from was the aha for us was going to events like this, being at other kind of comms conferences with our peers. And one of the questions that was always asked at every single event was, how do you measure your impact? How is the value of employee comms demonstrated to your leadership team? And it's a very hard question to answer. Nobody ever had the magic silver bullet. And often the answer was a bunch of channel-based metrics, right?
Got it.
Here's my clicks in my newsletter. Here's our views to our webcast or the intranet. And all of that does matter. As Amy was saying, what we felt was more important or an additional piece of it was, what are the broader company business challenges and how can comms have an impact on those things? So we do care about channels and measuring channels, but we care more about being an important part of the business and driving business change. So I think for us to go in and influence leaders, we have to lead with data. You can't walk in with sort of like just a strategy or just your own self-perception. And focusing on the things that they care about, which is solving real challenges, is a more meaningful conversation than your newsletter or your click-throughs or your intranet.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's about, we've loved kind of learning from our peers and learning from the outside to help make our own sort of strategies and choices. And that was a key part of our journey, was making that shift.
Great. I'm going to shift topics a little bit and talk about AI and CoPilot and all of the things and what that looks like for communicators. Some of just the work that I do and the customers that I talk with, a lot of the communicators are a little bit fearful still. They're just not really quite sure where does it integrate into their daily work, or is this going to take over my job, or this is too technical. I'm not a technical person. So I don't know, kind of maybe share a little bit about either your own personal AI journey or how you're kind of upskilling your own teams from a communications perspective and how you're kind of weaving some of that in. And then if you want to touch on the work that you're doing kind of at that broad scale, feel free to do that too.
I think we're really lucky in that when Microsoft, went big in AI and our AI transformation sort of journey, that Frank Shaw, the head of comms, really told us as a communications function that we needed to invest in building our own skills, finding efficiencies, leveraging the new technologies that were available to us and experiment, right?
Experiment, so good.
Experiment, what can you do? And it's evolved quite a bit over time. So Steve Clayton, who's our VP of Comm Strategy, really kind of manages this at scale for the organization, building new tools, offering new things for us to test across, CoPilot and agents. And I think for me personally, it's just been, okay, what are the things that I'm trying to do in my day-to-day job? What are the problems I'm trying to solve? And where can AI be an accelerator? So part of our team's remit is HR comms, right? So you're launching maybe a new benefit to the company.
Okay.
And there's a ton of information, right? Data and resources that are coming from HR that kind of tell you what you need to know. And AI can be a really great accelerator, and you feed that source information into CoPilot, and it can start to build the framework for a comms plan, right? Something that we used to do really manually, now I have a framework, I know what I need my output to be, right? So I can tell CoPilot what I'm looking for, and it can start to build that straw man that I can then take and refine over, with my knowledge and my expertise. So it's not really replacing my job, but it's accelerating how I'm able to do my job. And so that's kind of the place I always start. What are the problems I'm trying to solve, and what are the tools? Now, most of them are AI based that help me do that.
Yeah, love it. What about you, John?
Yeah, I'll just add to that and say that I just think it's making the space to try and experiment and learn and fail and try new things in different ways is really key. I mean, I personally am not someone who dives into new tools right away. I'm a late adopter in many cases. And in this case, you kind of can't do that, right? And I think, fortunately, when you use AI, even briefly, the value is so apparent so quickly that when you just sort of take those initial steps and you see that much value being added so fast, you realize the importance of spending time and trying these things out. So I think I'm very appreciative of kind of our comms leadership team offering that invitation, right? And creating tools for all of us to experiment, making the space to try things out, and looking to do things in new ways.
Yeah. An example that I know we talked about a couple of weeks ago was about the event recap. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of my, I think, aha moments with AI was we do a CEO town hall like every other company in the world does, and we have for years. And after every town hall, we have this whole exercise around analyzing the metrics, like the viewership and the themes that come out of the event and the sentiment around the event. And that work is often quite manual. We have an outside firm doing a lot of that analysis for us. It creates an email, it gets sent out to a large distribution list, and all that work is real hours and time and takes a couple of days to package up. And then of course just costs money because you're paying an outside vendor to do all that work for you, right? Now you can just go into CoPilot and you enter in your prompt, analyze the event for me and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden it comes back with a report. And in our case, the actual report was better, higher quality than the manual version. And essentially it's free. It's part of the CoPilot sort of application and there's no need to hire an additional person or team to do it for you. So I think that for me was a simple example of how can you apply automation and AI to a task that all of us do all the time.
All the time. Okay, so for our final question, we really want to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Microsoft. So this past year, we've been celebrating. You guys have done an incredible job with the campaign from an employee perspective, but also it's been kind of at the broad scale level and kind of externally as well. But would love for you guys to kind of maybe reflect back and just share a little bit about what we did and what you all did from an employee perspective and that communications piece, some of the campaign work. I know I have a lot of my customers who are either going to be celebrating milestones or they have company campaigns that they're trying to figure out what do they do and what that could look like. Will you talk a little bit about that?
We turned 50 in April. We actually spent the 50 days leading up to our birthday on April 4th, counting down to that significant moment. This was really a super collaborative cross-company effort. So I think comms had a huge role in it, but it really was many, many teams across the company. And the 50th campaign showed up in so many different ways. Our piece of it, being the employee piece, really showed up through this Viva Engage campaign that we, like I mentioned, counted down employees for 50 days. Looking back and celebrating change-making moments in our history, but with an eye to our future, right? So really leading to what do the next 50 years look like? And I talked earlier about how we've been really leaning into two-way dialogue. This was a way for us to do that in a really meaningful way at this really meaningful pivotal moment, as a company. Every day there was a different change-making moment. I think initially we set out to have leaders posting when it made sense. We had actually over half of the 50 moments were then posted by a leader that had a meaningful relationship with that moment. And you could see it just really resonated with employees in that team across the business, that had maybe worked on different products. Some of the moments were things like Zune, Windows Phone. Some of the moments were Hotmail acquisition. So it was a lot of fun. It was, again, nostalgia really mixed with this looking ahead, looking forward.
Love it. John, anything that you want to add? I know when your moment that you got to post kind of, I feel like went a little viral, but
right? My big shining star on
Shining Star,
Engage.
yes.
I guess a couple of things I would say. I think one, it was a global moment, and that was great to see that this was not just a moment that came from Redmond. Like every single Microsoft office was doing things at the local level to tailor it and make it more exciting for the people in that region, in that organization. And that was sort of great to see how the variety of things that were done kind of across the company. And I think the most important thing was sort of the forward-leaning message, right? You think anniversaries, you first think about looking back. Right. And that was an important part because I've been here for 33 years of those 50 years. So I find lots of meaning in what's been done and you can learn from that. But at the same time, it's about what's ahead for the next 50 years at Microsoft. I think that was a big piece of the theme that employees, I think, responded to and were excited about. and an important part of the overall campaign. So it was really fun.
Great, love it. All right, any closing thoughts or any words of wisdom you'd want to share for the comms folks, either that are here at the conference or that should be here next year? Anything closing that you want to share?
I would say, as someone who's been at Microsoft for quite a long time and in employee comms for a while, it's exciting to see all the innovation and change happening in the employee comms discipline.
Okay.
And the pace of change feels like it's much faster than it ever has been in the history of this sort of discipline. And the discipline is, I think, much more critical in many companies to driving change.
Yeah.
And so I think whether you're someone who embraces change, or you're more reluctant, or your leaders are more reluctant, or they're early adopters, it's your job as the comms leaders in this at different companies to lean in and to kind of, we use this sort of hockey expression in our team about you skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah.
Right, which is all about kind of looking ahead, what is down the road, and how can you build your team and your plans towards what's coming. And that's a big part of how we, I think, operate and try and think about our team.
I love it. Amy, any closing words?
I would say don't be afraid to experiment with new tools. And I think we're seeing more and more of the impact of trust internally and externally. So that's where I think I'll be investing and where I'm looking ahead.
Thank you both so much. Love the conversation that we had today. And we want to go deeper with you. Join us either at First Fridays, the first Friday of every month, or you can find more resources and ways to dig in at our site below. Thanks so much.